Drink a chug on go.
Oh, that'd be bad.
That way, no, that was going on. That's so fun. Oh my God. He been trying to kiss me finally the other day. He was leaving. I was outside the window.
He did.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Stuff fast.
They do at that age. They do at that age. Joan's not coming? Oh, no, she's up in Medford.
Yeah. Gary's got.
Gary's name. Okay, I think it's,
Kind of the siren.
oh, 101.
Thank you. I said something about Joan. We're talking about, me running after this too.
Yeah.
It's just too much.
I'm toast.
Then I go, my wife would come shoot me if I ran.
So too. Yeah. And I bring her the shovel and the bullets.
Yeah. She goes, that's kind of where Gary was too.
Closed session.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Ready? Everybody's. Call to the Yreka City Council special meeting, August 21st. All rise, pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please silence these cell phones. My phone, actually. All righty, we'll just jump to, we have public comments. This is time for public comments. Everybody knows the routine, so the public comments this time. Yeah, not related to the, you'll have plenty of time to talk on the unrelated stuff on that. If that's what you know, that's fine. I'll definitely give you guys everything time, so. Right to consent agenda, continuation of urgency ordinance, urgency resolution 2021-51, vote public hearings. That's 5 minutes. We have to do that every meeting. It's the council, motion to approve agenda. I'll make a motion. We got a second.
I'll second. Oh,
Yeah. Motion by me and second by Paul. And we got roll call. All employed here. Aye. Something like that. Cord Milton.
Aye.
Debbie Baird.
aye.
Okay, aye. And we still don't have Joan is not present, correct?
That's correct. Yes, she won't be here today.
Yeah, she did. I think she raised that. Yes. All right, we'll move on to number 6, old business discussion regarding updated comprehensive fee schedule.
Yeah, thank you, members of the Yreka City Council. This is Jason Ledbetter, your city manager. Let me adjust here. So as you're aware, at a prior city council meeting, the fee schedule was brought forward, which instigated the opportunity for a workshop to dig it deeper into these fees. Answer questions. We are going to have a presentation here by our finance director and our planning director, and then staff is available to answer questions through this process. I also just kind of want to point out that as we reflect back on some of the projects that we have in the docket, some of the maintenance costs that are going to accumulate into our already current deficit budget, that it's imperative that we look at all sources of revenue, whether it be the fees or multiple other opportunities for revenue. And that with this specific fee schedule, if, as we go through this process, we're going to reflect on, I believe, the utility bill and the water. And I think if I've learned anything through this process is that the fee schedule has to be evaluated with the budget every single year, because the fees are directly related to the cost of labor and the hourly rate that someone has. And as somebody works through the system and they get a step, then the fee technically should go up at that time. If we end up waiting 5-10 years down the road, then we find ourselves in a similar situation where we're having to fill a gap that looks like a large percentage increase. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our finance director. Thank you.
Emily Aldrich, Finance Director. So just to kind of give everybody the basic overview again, to remember where our money is coming from and what we can use it for. Your basic utility bill. We hear this all the time. Well, I pay my utility bill. Why didn't the police come? Or why didn't I, why do I have to pay a dog license? So just for the overview, in your normal utility bill, this is mine, you pay for water, and that can only be used for water resources, water infrastructure, maintenance of water. That is the only thing it can be used for. Sewer fees, same concept. Your landfill fee is to pay the county for taking over our landfill many years ago. And your fire is only for fire, cannot be used anywhere else. I can't take the fire money and use it for water and vice versa. That being said, our general fund funding is sales tax, which for every dollar collected, the city receives a penny and a half. So when you pay $2 in sales tax, we get hardly anything. Property tax. For example, when you pay $100 in property tax, we get $10. And then franchise fees and TOT. So those are our main funding streams for general fund. And what does that pay for? That pays for your police department, which is our highest costing department in the city, fire, parks, streets, planning, building, finance, and administration. So all in all, this isn't really there's not a huge resource to do all of these different funding mechanisms. Any questions? No? Okay. So I just want you guys to know what we're talking about. And a lot of these fees are general fund activities that we are performing that for specific citizens that are requesting the activity. Make sense?
Yep.
Okay. Juliana, you want to start with your administration fees or?
All right, so we broke these up to make it a little bit more digestible than the long 11/17 list. So these are the first fees in the staff report that we talk about. These are all just directly related to cost for providing administrative services and printouts. So this is just taking into account the ink and paper and maintenance of the machinery. The general printing of black and white and color are prescribed in state statute, and so they cannot go over the 15 cents per page for black and white and 25. And that's related to public records request laws to make it affordable for people to get copies for public records requests. So we just wanted to start with this one. If you have any questions on the administrative fees.
And I'm sorry to interject here, but just so everyone's aware, I think we've purposely split up to look at things.
Join the meeting.
And then that way we can kind of get an idea that, okay, this looks fine, let's move on, because some of these fees I don't think are as warranted to investigate. And I look at this one and I kind of think that's the issue here. So
yeah, we started with all of the fees from the last meeting that you didn't have a lot of questions or issues with that we recognized at that time. So we just kind of parceled them up so we could scoot through them to make sure you are comfortable with those. So we start with the easy ones and then we'll get to the ones that we had more questions on.
So I guess we're looking for a conversation on this piece of paper that we're staring at on the screen. And if there's really no interest and everybody feels completely fine, and I will remind the public, once again, this is the city manager, Jason Ledbetter, that no decisions getting made here today. This is a workshop. And if we put a check on this one, it doesn't mean it's passed. It means it will come to possibly the 9/20 meeting or a future meeting where it will be voted on.
Thank you. Reiterating that. So is there any questions from the council on this administration fees on what we have here?
Looks good.
I think it's pretty much cut and dry.
These fees are SOP if you go to any private business, except that attorney will charge you $1.50 a page to copy.
Yep.
But these are standard.
Yeah.
I do. And then address lists for mailing, we typically don't do a lot of those per year, but those are usually people with ABC licenses. They by law have to send out a mailer to everyone within a certain distance from them. So they usually come to us to get that mailer list. We provide it. Okay. That's what that is.
I might add, I don't know how the city runs, but many businesses, including schools, when we buy copiers or when we lease copiers, depending on what we're doing. I know at Jackson Street, we used a high volume where we ran about 2.5 million copies a year on that for the whole district. But any of our copy machines, if you have a maintenance agreement, then you also pay a percentage to the firm or the company that you buy the copy machine for, and that's usually about 1 cent or 1.5 cents per copy. So there's more than just paying for the paper and our personnel time. There are other hidden costs that a lot of people don't realize are there.
Cool. So we can move on to the next one.
Yep.
City clerk fees. We don't charge for anything. So the first one is notice of intent to circulate a petition. So this is a specific section of the election code, which allows members of the public to circulate a petition to put a referendum or a citizen's initiative on the ballot. And so this is a $200 fee that's set in state statute. And if they are successful, it is refunded back to them. So if their measure passes, they get the $200 back. We cannot charge any more than that, which is, it is what it is. And so copies of campaign statements, that's again, black and white, 10 cents per page. That is a statutory piece that we have to do that. If it is campaign statements, contributions, expenditure reports, and statements of disclosure of financial interest of 5 years or older, we can charge a $5 retrieval fee because those are typically older records that may need more time to go find. And again, these are all set in state statute.
Any questions from the council?
Nope.
No.
Cool.
Any questions from the citizens?
Nope.
Okay.
Public Works, so quite a few of these are not changing. So your backflow inspection, which is an annual inspection, is $35. And then it is based off of the valve size. And so we have a contract right now with a specialist who comes in and does that because you have to be a certified backflow inspector. So that we contract out. And so these are fees based on that contract. And then if we need to do any follow-up or subsequent inspections, it's $90 per hour, which is the hourly rate of that individual. He comes up from, I believe, like Red Bluff. Yeah. And so what he does is he does them all. He does the initial inspection all in one row. So it's not necessarily an hour each one. So we just do the 115 for the initial inspection for that 2.5 to 4 inch. And then the 6 inch and above is 175. But if he has to come back up from Red Bluff, that's when we start charging the $90 per hour to come back up and do that for properties that did not pass the first time over. We have not been charging for that additional time for him to come up. I believe, and Matt may be able to answer this more than me, I believe in the last year, we've had about 5 or 6 follow-up backflow tests. And so those are charged to those individuals who did not pass the initial. I don't know if you want to add anything, Matt. He's available. I know he was having audio issues, so it might be that. The next one is our MUELO compliance. So that's water efficient landscape ordinance. It's the document review. It's a $2,500 deposit versus actual cost. This is a one-time application for developments that may be changing their landscape plan or for new developments that meet the threshold of that ordinance. That is a state statute that we have to follow. The $2,500 is just for the cost of our reviewer to take a look at that. Obviously, if you have a larger scale commercial development, may take up the entire 2,500. If you've just got a house with a large yard that qualifies for that review, then it would probably be much less, and so you would be reimbursed the cost.
So what qualifies, I guess, I need to have clarification on that too, because what is that qualification?
I don't have the numbers in front of me. It's typically any new commercial development that's coming up. And I saw Matt unmuted and remuted himself. So I don't know if Matt wants to jump in. It's typically subject of the commercial developments, and for residential, I can't remember the square footage of landscaped area they have to have, but it's a pretty high threshold. Yeah, 5,000 square feet. Yeah, it typically doesn't happen for residential builds, like a single family home. If you've got a palatial estate, then yeah, it probably would. There are exemptions for cemeteries, so they are not subject to this. And there is exemptions for recreation fields that are exempt from this. And I believe schools are also exempt from it.
Question? Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm just, I guess, how do we enforce something like that when we have thousands of people with yards, and are we gonna go inspect their yards?
Nope.
So it's like
It's basically new construction.
just new construction.
Yep, when we get an application.
Yeah, and this is a, for lack of a better term, a state mandated
Program.
program. So, and it is applied for new construction when somebody has a permit review.
If someone were to go in and they had the 5,000 square foot landscaping mark and they did an entirely new landscaping plan, that could be subject as well, but I'm not familiar with what exactly the city of Yreka adopted. If you did adopt your base state statute, then they would apply to that. But again, it's over 5,000 square feet of landscaped turf area. And so that, again, people don't normally hit that mark.
Okay, the way it's written is deposit and actual cost. So that the deposit is above the cost.
It's the deposit and then we apply actual cost versus that. So they
it's
are
both.
It's always both. So if you're getting a deposit, you're applying that to actual cost.
As expenses come in, they will apply against your deposit. If you have money left over, great, we give that back to you. If there's additional costs above and beyond, we would ask you to pay those additional costs.
I think
So it'd be
maybe,
and or actual cost.
And or,
yeah, maybe a verbiage change here, I think,
that's
is
all.
what you were thinking,
Yeah.
Councilmember Baird, where it's more spelled out where the deposit is part of the actual cost, which I think is inferred what kind of you're stating, Juliana, right? Is there any other way to word this in your opinion? And or, okay,
I think the and or would be sufficient to say, you have your deposit and you use it up, a cost over that, you owe the additional costs. Yeah, I think that's easy. Deposit to be applied to actual costs.
Whatever
Deposits to be
whatever
applied
you'd like,
to actual
but if,
costs.
for
It's a-
me, a layperson reading that, so I have a deposit and the actual cost, that would be in my head.
It's just a deposit. Yeah, we can just do that.
Perhaps we could engage the city attorney to check the verbiage of what we write so that everybody's comfortable with it.
okay.
Cool. And then we have the simple encroachment permit is not changing. And so again, simple encroachment permits are one-time, easy encroachment permits that do not involve a traffic, basically a traffic plan to alter traffic. And then complex encroachment permits, we did increase to, or we're proposing to increase to $370 to better cover Ben Miller and Matt Bray's time. And those are, again, ones that require multiple day shutdowns of streets. That does, I don't believe, and Matt, you can correct me if I'm wrong, we don't apply the encroachment permit fee to special events that shut down the street, correct? I think he's having issues with audio still. We can clarify for that. It's my understanding we do not apply the encroachment permit. Retta? We do not apply the encroachment permit fee for special events. It's just the $75, correct? Yeah, that'll be a longer conversation, but my understanding is we do not charge that at this point for the special events. But it would be charged to multi-day shutdowns of streets or like the Vive Internet is running multiple sites within the city and they'll be working for an extended period of time. And so that's a complex encroachment permit.
Questions, comments, council, citizens? Next.
Yes. It's okay. I'm like,
Which
it doesn't
way we go?
change. I don't care what it says. It's just a deposit. So fire, we don't currently charge anything for this because we have not had an on-site full-time fire chief to inspect the fire plans. So these are one-time application fees. So when you have new construction or renovation that triggers the need for fire, that is where this comes in. So if you're doing a remodel that doesn't require a fire sprinkler or any fire, this doesn't apply. But this would apply for new construction that does require to be sprinkled. So this is the valuation sheet. So this is a base valuation similar to the building permit. This is again based off of Mount Shasta, Dunsmuir, City of Weed, and City of Shasta Lake have pretty much all the exact same fees applied for this. And this is for basically reimbursing Jerry's time, or if we do go out and get a contract for a fire marshal as well, it would cover their time for review. And you could probably go to the next one because I broke fire up into two sections because it was big and I wanted to make sure it was big enough for you guys to see. So this is sprinkler inspection and testing. As you can see, we did charge for some of it in the past, and now we're rectifying some of it with this one. So this is your fire alarm plan check fees, fire alarm field inspection and testing, and hood inspections for commercial kitchens, and then the per sprinkler head and sprinkler riser fee for one time. And so the other one that we're adding that we talked about last time is we have a false alarm fee. So that is per occurrence that we would charge $650 for the fire department mobilizing the apparatus, for fire department attending that false alarm. We have the first one free. Yeah.
One free. We have.
That warning's in written form, correct?
We do not have a policy
notice.
written yet, but we can put it in there.
Yeah, probably should.
We could just add an additional note that says the first occurrence is free for every occurrence after the first one can be.
Well, the other thing
$650.
you could do with the warning in written, because again, Jackson Street, they never give a written warning to they give a verbal warning always, but just have YPD give them a a written warning or citation, but I forget what they call it. Give them a written warning on a misdemeanor on that. That would probably cover you guys too, wouldn't it? Yeah, every time we go out.
We had, when I was in grammar school, we had an individual, in my grade that, thought it'd be funny to trip the alarms about once a week. They finally caught him after about 4 times. But all the students loved it. We got out of class, but it's.
Well, that and bomb threats that we'd have over there, one of them happened to be a teacher's kid.
Which I believe is a felony now.
Well, it was a felony then.
Yeah.
It's a felony to carry a squirt gun in a public
Yeah.
school now too.
Do you have any questions, council?
I think there's one more line of fire department, or we might just go right into building.
Oh, yes, there's still.
Okay, yeah, there's one more section. This is fire inspection. So these are facility inspections. Some of these agencies require an annual, sometimes they require a one-time. So it's basically, this should probably be per occurrence instead of one-time application. Some of the laws are shifting right now. So for example, daycares may change where they are not required on an annual basis. But this again is just charging for Jerry's time to go and do the walkthrough fire inspections that are required per state fire code. Yep. Councilmember McCoy has a question.
Looks good. Oh, sorry.
I wanted to ask, going back to the sprinkler inspection on the risers, does that include Ansel systems? Is that?
Yes.
Okay, so they don't cost anymore? An Ansel?
No, I know that the reason is, we did on the truck stop. They.
Okay.
Building inspector, they all part of, kind of together. And the village fire.
But we don't need to charge more for an Ansel than we do for, okay, thank you. Questions? Thank you.
Okay, cool.
Questions from the citizens? Come on. You gotta give them a mic or something. If it works.
What's the threshold of a residential remodel to install sprinklers?
I'd have to check the building and fire code for that. I don't have it off the top of my head.
But
I believe it's a percentage of the value, but I can find out for you.
because like a new roof.
No, that would not.
That would not,
No.
okay.
Else, council?
Cool.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, so this is building. I separated it up again. Sorry, this is a little bit smaller on the screen than I wanted it to be, but basically every single fee that we have in the current fee category uses the Consumer Construction Index. I was saying CPI last time and it's CCI. And so this is just following the construction index from 2006 to 2022, because we have not adjusted these since 2006. And so that is how we factored these to follow the inflation of the construction industry. Again, these are part of an application. So if someone does not have a heating element to their building permit application, they are not charged the heating fees. If they do not have a plumbing feature in their building permit application, they are not charged these fees. It's just if you're doing that piece. So if I'm going to redo my bathroom at my house and add a bathtub instead of a shower, I would be paying $15.97 for a bathtub inclusion. And that isn't in addition to the valuation calculation that we'll get to at the end of this. But these are very standard. I've already had a request from the city of Mount Shasta and Dunsmuir for the calculations on this, and it looks like they're going to follow suit and use the CCI to adjust theirs to the same level, because they have also not adjusted theirs for a series of years. I think Mount Shasta is even later than 2006. So. Oh, the one thing we did do as well is you'll see it later in the list, or I believe it was later in the list, but I moved it up. Monitor heaters, wood stoves, and a couple of other things had additional fees associated with each one, and we got rid of that since they're all part of the heating element portion. And we combined all of them, so it wasn't all different fees.
You're aware that Monitor is no longer in business, right? Monitor doesn't make heaters anymore. They've been out of business about 8-9 years.
Oh, it's just in reference to the actual like
Yeah.
freestanding heater style.
You might want to change it to kerosene slash diesel heater.
I have to check with James. I think we have to keep it at that language for the building code, because that's how it's specifically called out when we have to like name it. It's in reference to, it's kind of like the difference between a water fountain, a bubbler, and Oasis. They're all the same thing, but the building code and the plans may need to be listed as a monitor heater. So I can double check with James if that needs to be adjusted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like Xerox and IBM, how they suit each other. Because, you know, based on a Kleenex and tissue or Coke. So
Yeah.
Toyo Tommy's the only one now that I understand being sold in the Western United States.
I
Yeah.
think it just may be codified as the verbiage as a monitor.
Yeah, a monitor for me doesn't really, it doesn't matter what the brand is. It's just a freestanding heater unit that's typically floor mounted. So it could just be a difference in language for what we use, but I can double check with James if he wants to change the name of it. But I'm going to, in my opinion, I'm going to stick with the person who's going to be applying these fees and assessing it and going with the language that they use. I understand that may be kind of confusing for members of the public. But again, if James is the one who's going to be actively applying these or actively assessing these, I want to make sure that he knows what that word is. Again, it's like the same thing for planning. We have our certain vocabulary that we use, and so we try to understand it and write ordinances within the vocabulary. But I can check and see
I
if we
mean,
want to.
I know that in the construction industry in Siskiyou County, we have referred to them as kerosene heater freestanding or diesel freestanding. And we don't, and I mean, I know that when I looked to get another monitor and I said, I want a monitor, and they said, oh, they don't make them. You can only get a Toyotami. But, and I said, well, I want a freestanding, kerosene. And they said, we can get you that, but it'll be a Toyotami. So that's why I wonder, I mean, Xerox sued IBM over the usage of the name Xerox, make me a Xerox. So
Yeah, I can talk to James if you want to change the name. You can change the name. It really doesn't make a
I
difference.
just think it would be better for contractors. I don't know. Dwayne, you refer to them as monitors?
Well, yeah, but in generalization, just like
Yeah.
you're saying, that it's like you said, it's irrelevant at this point, and that they don't make them anymore, so. So I don't know.
But if you're gonna,
I agree with you though.
if you're gonna refer to a monitor, you're talking about a kerosene heater. So what do we refer to diesel heaters? Diesel.
No,
fuel.
I agree. The
Because we have
verbiage
diesel
needs to be
fuel
cleared
heaters
up.
in this city.
No, I agree. The verbiage needs to be cleared up for sure.
Yeah.
That's it. To
We
me,
can,
tri-
we can
that
just
triggers
change
some-
the word.
a brand,
We can
so
just call it a
it's-
freestanding heater.
Yeah, just like anything else.
Yeah,
Jill Corian, everybody calls it Corian, but it's acrylic solid surface, but it came out back in the 60s, but it came out in '80s. The Corian, and everybody still refers it to a Corian. Q-tip, everybody says a Q-tip, well, it's it's a cotton swab, so it's like same thing.
Well, yeah.
It's a name that you're picking, so I think, yeah, clarification, like what Paul's saying, needs to be just checked into it. So,
Okay.
good.
I do not care what you call it. I really
You're
don't.
like, you're going down a hole you don't need to go down, so let's skip it, yeah.
Yeah,
Check into it. and we'll
it's a
move on.
heater. It provides
Yeah,
heat.
like it's a heater, dang it.
So electrical, we pulled electrical out again, applied the same way, the CCI from 2006 to 2022.
Now, we charge for a propane tank, but we do not charge for a kerosene or a diesel tank.
We do.
Okay.
Yep, they're all
What's the
same.
difference between the charge for an in-ground tank and the charge for an above ground?
So the above ground tanks, I have to double check with James, but I believe the underground tanks are actually inspected by a completely different agency because it's a public health hazard. So I believe that we contract with the county on that. I haven't done an underground tank in a while, but I do know that we do inspect the above ground tanks. Doesn't matter what the fuel source is, it's just a tank. But I can ask him what he would qualify it as within these schedules if you're interested.
Well, I'm just wondering, is it on here? Is a diesel or a kerosene fuel tank on here?
It would be charged to the same propane tank. So
Right.
one of the pieces of the building code is there is a section that if it doesn't fit within these categories perfectly, it's up to the discretion of the building official to charge a like fee. So propane tank would be the same as a kerosene tank, which would be the same as,
Yeah.
whatever heating fluid you want to put in there. If you want whale oil, it'd be the same
And
inspection.
I just think it needs to be spelled out. Because I think the city could get themselves, I mean, be very easy to say it's not, I'm not gonna pay it, it's not there.
Yeah, exactly.
We can call it a fuel tank. That's fine.
That's all you'd have to put, yeah, it's fuel tank.
Yeah.
Then it covers both.
Well, then it would cover that, it would cover LNG if it ever came in, all that.
Perfect. Good catch. Okay, electrical. Fixtures. Questions on electrical?
Nope.
Cool. So I think the last one is the valuation sheet, or sorry, plan check general. So this is gonna vary. So the building permit fee now and the building permit fee that we're proposing are gonna be the same, where it's a valuation chart plus 5% finance administrative fee. So going back to one of the things we talked about, so Emily's department with finance does a lot of background work as with the city clerk with filing and records retention. And so none of that was being accounted for in our building fees. And especially those building plans are quite strenuous to scan, file, make sure they're delivered to the county. We have to give them a monthly report. We also have to do additional reporting to the state on all of our building permits. So we added that proposed 5% admin fee. And then plan check is 65% of the building permit fee, which is what it is now. Strong motion fee is a state mandated fee. You cannot change that. California building standards fee is same thing. That's a statutory requirement. What we ended up doing for a demo permit, $50 does not cover enough time to be able to do the inspections for demos because it usually involves both the fire department, the building department, and additional inspections as the demo occurs to make sure everything is going safely. We also typically have to make sure that it's environmentally sound and communicate with the California Air Resource Board, or not the control board anymore, CARB. We do have to communicate with CARB on every demo to make sure that the demo does not have asbestos or any other type of material that can go airborne. If it does have asbestos, that's a lot of additional permitting for both the property owner and the city. So we're recommending to move from a $50 base fee charge, or it's only $50 right now, to $2 per square foot of demoed area, which helps. So if it's a bigger demo, it's going to need a lot more inspection. It's going to need a lot more testing and reporting on. So we're basing it off of the amount of area it's going to take for us to facilitate that. Green tag / electrical plan fee, we currently charge $54. We would like to move this over to the valuation portion. So similar to a building permit fee where it's based off of the value with a minimum of $154, which covers 3 hours of James's time. So that's typically the amount of time it takes him to review the electrical plans, to visit the site to make sure everything's okay, to work with Pacific Power on the power connection, and arrange all of that. So that's what the 154 is a minimum of 3 hours. Commercial re-roof, we're recommending to continue to do that based on valuation. That is currently done on the valuation of the re-roof. Residential re-roofs are only $30, which is significantly less than what it takes to do those inspections. And so we're recommending to move to a square payment. So it would be $6 per square. A square is equal to 100 square feet. That's in the additional notes section, with a minimum payment of $150, because again, we have to assess the permit, we have to go to the site, and then we have to final. And so that's about 3 hours of James's time. And he came up with these fees based on his estimated amount of time it takes for that. So solar commercial deposit is valuation with a minimum payment of $1,000. The commercial solar does not have a statutory requirement associated with it, but residential does. And so you'll see that our residential solar deposit is a valuation not to exceed $450 because we are held to that $450 by the state of California. So that's for that one. The reinstatement of a building permit right now is only $50. That is significantly less than what it costs to get back into reassessing those building permits. So we're recommending 10% of the building permit fee to reinstate a building permit. And so you have, from the time that you are awarded a building permit, you have 6 months to get an inspection, and then your permit is deemed void, or James uses a specific term for it. But basically it's voided at that point. And so this reinstatement fee would be for someone who didn't get an inspection for more than 6 months. And if they'd like to do the same exact thing that they were doing, we would allow them to do the reinstatement. The building code allows you to do the reinstatement for up to 2 years after the building permit is acquired. So that's what that is associated with. Hot water installation, very straightforward. Oh, that's the consolidation that we have, is the hot water installation and wood stove inspection only fees. We combined those into the heating element permits up above, or sorry, just below that, which includes heat pumps, hot water, heater, pellet stove, wood stove, monitor heater, etc. We can change the monitor heater nomenclature, or the language there. This would be based on valuation with a minimum of $150. Again, 3 hours minimum time. And the other inspection not listed would be similar, valuation or minimum $150, 3 hours of time. Daycare inspections for building would only be the large group daycare homes per request. So we do not require fire and building inspections for daycares. We cannot require that under state law, but the state will sometimes request that daycares go and get those inspections. And if it is requested by the state, we will charge, which we are allowed to do based on the initial information that I have. If that changes, that will be taken away or changed.
Do you have any questions on that section? I guess my question be on the $2 per square foot for demo permit. That could be pretty costly for somebody that's
expensive.
stripping out their whole interior of their house. Redoing all the sheetrock and the floors and the ceiling. You got a 1,500 square foot house, you're triple that. So you're 4,500 square feet minimum. And you got $2 per square foot for that, for just ripping and tearing. So I mean, I don't know, to me, that seems costly.
Can I ask, this is Jason Ledbetter, the city manager. Can I ask Mayor Keg, based off your own personal experience, because I think you do work, what you've just described to us, can you ballpark the cost of that?
Describe what the cost of ripping and tearing that out.
Yeah, you just described kind of a square footage of a remodel. Can you kind of quote a price on that?
Oh, I mean, I could, breaking it down for a kitchen remodel or something like that, when you have just a section of it. That's what I'm saying. If you were to do a whole house, if you're doing a kitchen remodel, you got approximately, 200 square feet, maybe 300 square feet on a smaller house. That's the floor first. So if you're stripping that out as far as the ceiling, the walls and replumbing, then you have your plumbing that's going to be involved in this.
So in that circumstance, you would not be assessed a demo fee. That would just be a building permit fee.
Okay.
A demo fee is if you're knocking down a house, you're knocking down a
Okay.
portion of
I
your
guess that's
house.
why I needed clarification.
Yes. Yeah,
Demo.
the demo fee is only if you're doing demo.
Well, demo in
Yeah.
in the construction industry, demo can mean anywhere from taking out sheetrock to taking out a laminate floor. So
There's the whole structure, the whole structure.
yeah.
If
there
you're
needs to be some
demoing a
clarification.
portion of the house, that will not be reconstructed. So if you're demoing a sunroom on the front of your house because it's falling off, if you demo that and you're not replacing it, you would only be assessed the demo fee. So you wouldn't have to come back and get a building permit or anything. You would just be allowed to demo that and do whatever you'd like with that front section of porch if it's still able to be sustained. So that's the example of a demo fee. The other thing too is, say for example, the fire did run through the city. You would be assessed a demo fee if you're not going to rebuild your home. Or if you were going to rebuild your home in over 2 years, you would be assessed the demo fee first, which would then be covered by your insurance anyway. And then you would do your building permit fee. So if you're reconstructing, that is part of a building permit application and would not be assessed both a building permit and demo.
Not double dipping.
Yes. So if you're like removing a deck, because typically we'd have to inspect that deck for structural support. If you're going to be removing it, not replacing it, or you're just going to be replacing it with stairs, we're not going to charge you a full building permit fee for stairs. It would just be the demo fee, which is going to be significantly less than a building permit.
Still sounds a little high to me, but that's.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like you said, if you get someone has a wraparound deck, if that's the case, want to eliminate it, then for taking out their deck, they're getting charged for taking out their deck and they don't want it. And it's deteriorating, so they're making it less of a hazard. So I don't know, that's a little.
I mean, demos has the city of Yreka.
We maybe do 2, 3 a year, maybe. It's usually people demolishing a large shed in their backyard that's over 120 square feet. It's usually people removing old structures. Yep.
Well, the unfortunate thing is probably 90% of the people will do it without getting any type of permit anyways. So that's, I mean, we're only catching when we're doing that, we're only catching the honest ones, or even, I shouldn't even say the honest ones, it's the people that have knowledge of this. People that don't have knowledge of this would go, and I'll be the first to admit, I've tore out stuff in my own house in the past that didn't get a demo permit, tore it out. And
I mean, a lot of people don't get building permits either.
Right,
We're
correct.
seeing it more and more where people are trying to sell their homes or buy homes and their financing agencies will not give them loans because we find out that homes had an illegal addition or We just dealt with one where someone converted a garage illegally to a living unit, and now they're trying to sell the property. They can't because it's not a legal unit. So now they're having to go back, get a building permit, which then requires us to rip out some of the drywall to see how they put their electrical in. So again, that's also part of the building permit fee, is sometimes doing those code enforcement and reimbursing us for that and having to do all of this back work, which ends up taking a lot more time than if you would have just gotten the permit in the first place.
Yeah, just to chime in on top of that is, and that's one thing that with this new staff that has been hired here, I think we saw a void, or our planning director saw that void, and with our current new building inspector, there's a more proactive approach when we see construction to go stop and validate that they have a building permit. And so there's obviously a cost associated when we talk about, you know, the dog licensing and getting up to 80%, there's a cost associated to enforce.
The other thing too is, you know, I have seen a situation where a historic house had a beam supporting the interior of the house that they didn't realize. They took down a porch and they ended up compromising the structure of the historic home. And so that's why we do have demo permits, is we need to make sure you're not doing something that's actually going to be detrimental to the overall structure, which is unsafe, which is a liability.
Especially for a homeowner, you know, you get a contractor involved. 99% of contractors are gonna be able to look at it and go, yeah, we're not taking that out. It's structural. They'll know that. Yes, Mr.
I don't think FHA, and Corey, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think VA would probably loan on a house that had an unpermitted addition, and I think we're actually doing people a disservice by letting them get, you know, by not helping them. They're, you know, I mean, they're getting that far into a buy, and then it's like, oh, you can't buy it, it doesn't qualify, and then, you know.
Yeah, well, they won't. It depends on this. The sellers, the obligation disclose it different. An appraiser can go and call for a permit. They usually don't. The only time you run a problem, he goes and says, hey, this looks weird or shady on this house, you know, like a janky room addition, he calls for their permit. That's the only time it comes to question.
We get a lot more of it now. It's actually ramped up probably in the last 3 years that we get a lot of those calls.
Like a shady addition. Say, oh, this addition looks a little weird. Should we permit?
Mhm.
And bid on that. But normally the inspectors don't call for an inspection, the appraiser can't. So well, certain loans like Paul says, that doesn't FHA require, because I know that maybe it was just a general bank loan, that when my wife bought the 3rd Street house, that she had to get updated on electrical panel and on some other things in order she can get a loan. If it's not included in the square footage, so if they said they did something and it's not on the square footage obligation to say it's not a square foot living, even though it shows, say, 100 square feet, you know, or whatever, that's the only obligation, if they don't square count that square footage, but there's nothing saying they have to do that. There's certain other things like, yeah, peeling paint, a roof, foundation, all others, you know, stuff, but they don't check. Yeah, they were really strict about 2 years after the crash. With permits, checking permits, because they wanted to make sure everything was livable at that time. Yeah, makes sense. A lot of illegal additions that were calling. But it happens, I mean, because I think that appraiser is something a little weird, and say, oh, wait, this looks different than it is. Yeah, not a big issue. Big issue. Yeah. Oh, wow.
So if we go to the next slide, this is the valuation chart. So again, the fee on the right-hand side, we took the current fee, which is approximately $23, $24. I don't have it off the top of my head because it's a separate 8.5 by 11 sheet. We did the math. We just basically adjusted that number by the CCI again, did the same thing. And so I have examples of a recent I can do math, but I can't count. I have extras if anyone wants any. So I just took calculations for a recent commercial build in the city and a recent residential build, and I took the fees that they were charged under the current fees, And then I did the assessment based off of the proposed fees. And so starting with the residential side, this was a $60,000 residential renovation and addition. They paid $1,188.49 in the application fees or the user fees, which is about 2% of the total cost of the build. Under the new proposed fees, they would pay $1,924.83, which moves it to 3.2% of the total cost of the build. And then if you go to the other side for commercial, 1804 Fort Jones, which is your Arby's that you're very excited about, it's valued at $1 million build. They're currently assessed $9,373.93, which is 0.9% of the total cost. Over to $15,231.99 for the proposed fees, which is 1.5% of the total cost. We do multiple inspections under this. So again, this is covering our time to analyze the permits. It's our time to set up the pre-application meetings. It's our time to go through and do all of the recording. It's the plan checker fees. It's all of those things wrapped into this. So that's what these pay for. And we are not recovering costs to do so. So for example, Arby's, James, last time I talked to him, has been there several times. So you have to go for an inspection on the parking lot pours, the foundation pours, electrical, plumbing. And again, if they fail, that's a whole nother application or a whole nother visit that we have to do. We don't charge people for failed inspection. So if we have to keep coming back, we don't get additional dollars from them to do that. That is all covered in these fees that we're talking about. So that's just, I'm just going to open it up from there.
Yeah, let's open up for the council if there's questions on that one. I guess my only question would be, on some of that, I mean, we definitely need to up some of this stuff, so it's definitely for sure, but going back to our baseline thing, going for remodel stuff, where we upped it to $30,000, then somebody has to, now they have an extra fee here, which is not a lot, like you're saying, keep in mind that 60,000, go back to the front side there on the residential, $60,000. Somebody does a kitchen remodel, that's this day and age, $60,000, that's, I can eat that up real quick.
Mhm.
I got a remodel I'm doing down in Edgewood right now. It's $110,000 kitchen remodel. So, in regards to that, if we're here in the city of Yreka, you do that $60,000 remodel, and you can probably even eat that up in a bathroom if you're doing a fancy bathroom. So you got a person that's doing that. You got a person now that doesn't have any sidewalks in front of their house. Now they're gonna have to put sidewalks in front of their house.
And that's completely separate.
I realize, I'm just saying this is a general picture, so everybody's aware that the fees this $1,924.83 doesn't reflect the other stuff that's going on too. So we just need to keep that in mind as a council, that also this person that would do this $60,000 remodel and they don't have sidewalks or a light pole in front of their house, now we'll have to put that too in front of there. That's the other added cost on top of this $1,924 fee.
That would be unless they're in a sidewalk exempt area, which there is some in Yreka, and in a sidewalk exempt area, then you can either put in the sidewalk or you can pay a sidewalk exemption fee,
Right.
which I have done on both my houses, on Dexter and my house when we lived in it, and I did it in my house on Cedar. So because that's what we chose to do. I mean, again, for us, it was a cost of doing business. I can tell you that I just finished a very significant job that we've been working on for about 7 years. We had about 2 years of building. And I'm not gonna tell you what we paid in fees to county, state, and city, but it was probably more than most of you paid for your houses, and it's a cost of doing business for a business. Yeah, it's a cost of doing business. And if I'm gonna come up here from Los Angeles and I'm gonna build I'm just gonna build a small home, 5,000 square feet. A McMansion, which is what a lot of these people are coming up with. They're selling their home. Like my brother-in-law's 1,200 square foot home in San Diego is worth $1.2 million. Comes up here with his $1.2 million. It's all paid off. You can build a house. They're not squirming. People are not squirming. And and I know I've cut you off, so I apologize. But my thing is, we have to decide whether are we ashamed of our city, I mean, if we're ashamed, I would not raise anything. If we just are ashamed and we don't, and we just want people to come here because we want them to come, but I'm proud of this city. I'm proud of where I live. I want to live here. If people want to come and live here, I think it's great and I want to invite them, but I'm proud. I think, and you know, I'm not, if I have a candy bar, I'm not going to charge a dime if it's a good candy bar. I'm going to charge, you know, about 25 like everybody else does.
Well, and I guess just to cover that really quick, we can't charge profit. So
I'm not
it's-
saying
yeah,
that.
and
I'm not
yeah.
intimating that. What I'm intimating is we also can't go back to the first 2 decades of the 20th century and charge what we were charging there.
And we have talked to the builders, and I mentioned this at our last meeting, and I just talked to James again today. So he talked to everybody this week. He told people that this meeting was happening and he asked their opinion on it. He's gone to, I think he had 16 job sites today. He had several yesterday, and then he had 4 on Monday that he went to. And so he's talked to everybody about this, and every single person understands. And they say that's really not a big issue for them. It's part of doing business. And so he's met with local people. He's also met with people from out of state who are in the area. So like the Pacific builders who are doing a lot of that. So, I mean, we have been talking to people and checking with them about this. And we haven't received any issues at this point.
No, I wasn't
Yeah.
debating. I wasn't debating this. I was just bringing it to everybody's attention.
Yeah.
There is other things that goes in conjunction to it, you know, that I'm not saying that we shouldn't be, raising certain rates. We definitely have to raise certain rates just to keep on top of it. But I just want to make sure everybody's aware that there's other things incorporated with that little old lady that has to remodel her bathroom just so she can get in and out of the bathroom, that there's that $1,900 is not the only fee that she's. Little old man.
Little lady, little man.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I do have a concern that the only people that will be able to afford to do anything are people that are just moving to the area. My concern is that we make sure that the locals can still afford to live here and do something. So, and I am so sorry. There's some other, I have Reddings and I have Mount Shastas, and hours that I've been doing my homework. And, I did want to ask you a few things. I just can't figure out when we're gonna get there.
Mhm.
So when.
Planning is after building.
Okay, I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the council? Okay, so any questions from citizens at this point in time? Okay, move on to planning.
So we kind of went through these last time. We'd like to shift over a majority of these applications to a fee-based system. And so I ran the numbers of a recent boundary line adjustment. So they paid $800 upfront, which is the main fee. And then they ended up paying $2,700 so far on the back end, and they have not finished their BLA review. And they have been charged that back end $2,700 for PACES review. So for the parcel maps and property line adjustments, the reason why there's such a high cost to that is that we require that a California licensed surveyor review the maps and the California licensed engineer stamp the maps. And so that is our PACE engineering contract, which is going for about $250 per hour. And so that goes to their time to do that. I am unable and unqualified to be able to stamp those plans. And so that goes over to them for that aspect. And so major 2 to 4 parcel split, not CEQA exempt, that requires me to do a public hearing with both the planning commission and the city council. So that fee goes to that, preparing those public notices, as well as paying for the mailers and the noticing in the paper, and then preparing the staff reports to be presented to planning commission and city council.
I do have a lot of questions and they're all right here. And if you answer one, it'll answer all of them.
Okay.
Okay, so the administrative parcel map, we have the 4,661. Mount Shasta has the 2,666.58.
Mm.
So what are we doing above and beyond that they're not required to do?
You're
Why-
paying me more. I get paid $24 more an hour here than I did in Mount Shasta. And they also can't hire a planner now. So it's kind of part of the issue with Mount Shasta in general and comparing our fees to theirs. Although I developed their entire fee system, which is why it looks very similar.
Yes, it does. It
Um,
remains-
they pay their staff significantly less than we do, to the point that they're having hiring issues. The other thing too is the city engineer, or sorry, not city engineer, the public works director is also involved in BLAs to make sure that easements or utilities are being done correctly. And so that's Matt's time as well. And so you pay Matt more than Mount Shasta pays their public works director.
Okay.
So that's going to be the big difference for the 29.92 base fee as well, is that's the same positions here as it is in Mount Shasta, but they pay significantly less for those positions in Mount Shasta.
Okay, that does answer all of them. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, and then the other thing too, for Reading, I did look, there are a couple of fees slightly less, and I did call over. They have their own in-house engineer, which is cheaper per hour than it is for us to go through Pace Engineering.
So if somebody comes in, they already have their own engineer that can stamp it, then what does that mean for us as a city? Because if we got, it's an engineer certified, so it doesn't matter what engineer, if it goes a city engineer or another engineer, there's.
It by law has to be a city engineer.
It has to be.
That's in the subdivision map act.
Really?
Yes, it does say
Even though it's all
specifically.
certified by the state of California, it doesn't matter, it still has to be, that's kind of.
Well, I think that a city engineer would be applying all of the liability, all of the concern, the law to the plans, and we couldn't guarantee that with a outside person.
I see what you're saying,
It's-
this still kind of cracks me up the way our state runs things.
Well, it's the same way for California Environmental Quality Act. So if we need to do an initial study or an environmental impact report, we could allow the applicant to prepare their own, but we prefer not to do that because we cannot guarantee that the data that they're presenting or the analysis that they're doing is unbiased. And so that's why we always have to have a check and balance of having a third party do it, or to have the city engineer who's taking on that liability. So it's the same thing for the building official. The building official doesn't even normally have the same qualifications as an engineer, but we do require engineered stamp plans for a commercial building that James then reviews with our plan checker, who is an engineer as well.
That's a whole other issue I don't want to get into.
Yeah. Yeah, so
As a contractor, I don't want to even.
unfortunately, and this is something that I learned as well, because in other states, planners can just do boundary line adjustments because you're not creating any new parcels and there's no issues. And actually, that was something I personally got called out on within a year of being at Mount Shasta, is those also have to go to the city engineer due to state statute. They should be straightforward, I agree, but unfortunately, my hands are tied as much as everyone else's. And so the other thing that I will present in the staff report that I don't have here today for you is a separate section that wasn't in the first one, which is we can lower fees if we do some cleanup in our ordinances. One of the big issues and why it takes so much time for us to go through some of these applications is that Yreka does not have a very intuitive municipal code and development standards. And so, for example, we were looking up signs today to deal with a sign application, and we had to sort through 7 different code sections to determine which one actually applies. And so as we continue to do the zoning code update and clean up our code book, it could actually drop costs because we're not wasting time having to line up a bunch of older or maybe outdated codes. Because that's the other thing that's difficult, is right now our Muello is actually not in compliance with state code, which means that state code supersedes it. So then I have to look up the state code to be able to apply the local code and then look at what's different. So that takes time. And so we're able to save time if we become more efficient. And so I'm offering a couple of suggestions in the next meeting of these are things that actually could bring costs down as well. And so hopefully every year that we're able to do this, we're refining what we're doing and can keep costs as low as possible. So as we go through and do that, that's another possibility we can apply to these.
But we no longer have to keep the horse drops filled out front of the business. You don't have to keep the horse drops filled out front of the business anymore.
Yeah.
Oh, well, you can't
Well,
walk on the,
that's, I mean, I see what she's
Yeah.
speaking to though, is,
yeah, no high heels on the tennis
and we're
courts.
going to wear high
That's what
heels
I
on the
like.
tennis court
Yeah.
now.
2 days in jail. So going through extensions are pretty self-explanatory for subdivisions. It operates similar to the building permit, is sometimes we will get information from surveyors, and then they just will not get the information back to us in a timely manner. And this extension fee kind of drives them to get things done in a timely manner. We by law have statutes for how long we have to review things. And so we would like other people to do so, because if I've looked at a subdivision and then you give it to me 9 months later, I have to then refresh to what's going on with that subdivision. Annexation, is not $750 of time. Annexation is typically anywhere from a year to a 2.5 year process. And it is a very involved process with LAFCO, the county, and the city. And so that is a deposit-based system. If it is one person annexing one lot, very simple. If it's someone doing 56 acres, much more complex, and depending on the development type itself. And so the next one is use permits. Again, conditional use permits can be very, very cheap, but they could also be extremely costly. So again, the conditional use permit may involve the city engineer. It is not anticipating much city engineer work now, but it could be something depending on the conditional use itself. We just had the Golden Eagle Charter School move their conditional use permit from one property to another. In that case, it probably would not exceed $3,000, but it is not 500. It does cost more because we are now required to file more CEQA documentation, which costs money at the county. And that's something that the county charges that we have to filter through. And then we have to go through and do the staff reports, public hearing notices. Again, as we go through the zoning code update, that's when we determine what's a use by right, what's conditional use, and what's prohibited. So if you want to, again, cut costs for certain users or certain types of businesses, you move them from conditional use to use by right. That saves them money and time. So again, not really part of the base fee that we're talking about now, provide that service, but it's something in the future that we'll bring back to you for consideration. Temporary use permit, $778. That's just basically the amount of time it takes to do those. Those are all administrative approvals that do not go to Planning Commission. And to note again, the temporary use permit, although it lists a special event as a temporary use, we have removed that from this and are just applying the $75 still. We will address that one at a later date. Site plan review, same thing. For example, NorCal has submitted a site plan review. They've only paid $750 for my time. They are being billed back Pace's time for the engineering review, but they are not covering Matt Bray's time to review. They are not covering any additional time I need to take with them, and they're already altering their site plan review, which doesn't require a new application, but it is going to take more of my time. And so it would have been nice to be able to have a deposit-based system to say, hey, if you're changing your project significantly, it's going to cost a little bit more money because we're going to take more time. And then that way they're able to transparently say, yes, I accept that, let's move forward. Or, oh, if it's going to cost that much more, I think I'll just stay with my original proposal. Give them that ability. We do not charge for accessory dwelling unit permits. I'm not proposing that we do because we need to update our ordinance. And even when we do that, those laws are changing in terms of what we can and can't charge for
So what
those.
are those changes? Just curiosity sake, because I know a lot of people are doing more accessory dwelling units or looking into that.
Yeah, I covered a little bit last night, but in terms of fees, we cannot charge connection fee for accessory dwelling units. Diff fees are, you cannot charge diff fees, I believe, if it is under a certain square footage. I believe it's like 1,000 square feet. You cannot charge any diff fees. And then if you're under 900 square feet specifically, you are not charged school fees as well, which that's very interesting. And so for the accessory dwelling units, they would still be charged a building permit application because you are still building, but the cost to build is going to be significantly less than what you would like a single family home because you are not held to the current building code unless the single family home is new. So if you're building a single family home and an ADU, you're under the current code. But if you have an older home, you're adding an ADU, you're held to 2006 or newer, depending on the age of the house.
And Mount Shasta has a $230 fee for that.
They do charge. Yeah. They have a whole application process. I have no idea who did that. Home occupation permits are more than $75. It's we're going to ask to bump it up to $125. This is in addition to the business permit, business license. But this is a one-time application and it stays with the property. So if someone, for example, the other day, someone is running a taxi business out of a house. We are actually not going to consider that a home occupation permit because they are storing several vehicles on the street. But say a person wants to operate their cabinetry business out of their home, they would get a home occupation permit one time. That's to make sure that the business itself and the property owner understand the regulations around home occupation. And then they'd have to get the business license on an annual basis, which business license is not part of this because that is considered a tax. So this is just, again, it's like the livestock fee that we'll talk about later. It's just to ensure that people understand how to operate a business that does not disturb their neighbors. So I have had to revoke home occupation permits for people who cut wood in their yard. So that was a situation where a neighbor said he was cutting wood from 9 in the morning until 9 at night, and it was giving her a headache and migraines, and other neighbors started to complain. This gives us the ability to permit that and then go in and either control that and try to work with both neighbors by limiting the amount of time, or in that circumstance, we had to revoke the permit because the use was just too disruptive to the neighborhood. We ended up having to put noise sensors out, and it was pretty loud.
Which makes sense. I'd like to go get back to, like you said, a cabinet maker. Well, cabinet making, you usually spray cabinets and everything else.
Running
So if you have
power
somebody
tools.
that's doing that out of their house, which I know of somebody around town that's doing that. That they, that's very disruptive to the neighbors. I wouldn't want it as a neighbor, somebody having a cabinet shop next to me.
Running tools and things like that. So that's just raising it slightly just to pay for the time. Mainly it's Felicia's time to help them. She does most of the work for the home occupation permits. And she has not been factored into the fee. Is that planning fiscal tax? Great. So I think this is the section of permits that there were some questions about. So sign permits are a one-time application fee. So, and it stays with the property. And so if you are getting a sign and you want to move it to another property, you have to get another permit. That is just basically to make sure that the sign fits the facade of the building. And there's no safety concerns with that. And so that's up to $315. Again, those do take a lot of time to go through because we need to make sure that they're complying with building code standards if they need a building permit. We need to go and make sure that the calculations are correct for calculating the signable area of a building. And it's the same for a district sandwich signboard, which again, it's a sign, so they're the same price. District signboards are different though. They are required to both get that signboard and then an annual encroachment fee, which is a simple encroachment fee because they're typically putting it in the city right of way.
And
So it's
what would that encroachment fee be?
It's $100. The biggest issue we find with that is not the cost of the encroachment fee, is we get a lot of complaints from businesses about the insurance liability level that we need. And that's based off of SCORE.
Yes. Adverse sales. Many cities charge for adverse sales. We do not.
For real estate. I guess what kind of sales?
Adverse sales. They are signs that they put in the sidewalk that look like a sale. They're called adverse sales.
Oh.
We probably have 24 in the city.
Yes.
And I don't,
Feather.
I mean, they don't, most cities don't charge a ton, but they might charge like $15 for a year for you to put on adverse sales, usually an annual. Because adverse sales they're changed up because they do go bad.
Mhm.
But they're the latest big thing in the United States.
They're everywhere. That would be a temporary sign permit, which is the next one, which the temporary sign permit is a little high, but we have a very interesting sign code that requires us to do extra permitting for temporary signs outside of the regular signage. So I think when we go to update our sign code, a lot of these sign permit fees will be able to be reduced. Our sign code is not super great. I had issues with it earlier today already. We don't have a definition for a directional sign, which you should probably have that. So we'll probably get to that ordinance sooner rather than later. But yes, you do have to get a temporary sign permit for those typically. The reason why I couldn't think of what you were talking about is in the ad industry, they call it a feather sign as well. So I'm used to hearing that. But yes, those require temporary sign permits. In terms of the current signs in the city, we are keeping a log of every single sign that is illegal in the city. We don't have a lot of actual permitted signs. I think Felicia ran the numbers and it's under 50, including temporary. So we are actually doing that right now where we're keeping a list because we're going to hit everybody at the same time. And we're going to prioritize certain signs over others. Because at the end of the day, signs are like dogs. It's really hard to get 100% compliance and it takes a lot of administrative time to get compliance. So that's our new next big code enforcement effort, but we need to all be ready to go for that one because it's going to take a lot of coordination.
Well, and I have spoken with you because as a member of the planning commission, but prior to that, the historic commission, we have signs on Minor Street that are well out of compliance, shouldn't be there. Detract from the nature of the fact that it is a historic district and wouldn't fly in Virginia, they wouldn't fly in Kentucky, they wouldn't fly in DC, they wouldn't fly in downtown LA, stuff like that. So, and you know, I've talked to you about it before, so I appreciate that you're gonna start. Because it hurts the other businesses down there when you've got these crappy little signs hanging off of hide that's hanging down.
Yeah, no, I'll just follow up on that, that we are going through the process of the Highway 3 beautification project. And this is another great opportunity for us, because if we're trying to invite people off of I-5 into our town, the first thing they see, if you drive on I-5, take a look
Plastic
and
signs hanging
see
down.
what the signs look like that are missing or faded.
We have 15 minutes. General plan, text amendment, map amendment, those are like annexations. They take a lot of time and effort moving that to a deposit. Rezoning and zoning text amendments tend to take quite a bit of time. We just have the Turry Street rezoning. Again, the issue with the Turry Street rezoning is more code related and less fee related. So as we do the code amendments, a lot of that will be taken care of. Rezoning and zoning text, I hope people are not applying for those in the next year, because we're going to do it part of the general plan anyway. So we're encouraging them to wait if they can. But again, that takes quite a bit of reporting and paperwork and public noticing. Variances are the same thing. Historic district, minor exterior alterations, are proposing to increase from $75 to $145. Again, we have to go through the historic code. We have to take a look at the historic documentation to make sure everything's okay. And do that for what's pre-approved. Major exterior alterations is a deposit because it's considered a conditional use under the ordinance. So we keep it the same fee as the conditional use permit. And then appeals, 15% of permit fee or minimum $500. Again, the larger the project that someone appeals, the more it's going to take time, because we're going to have to get Don involved, and Don's expensive. And so that's when we call him in and to do that. And so appeals for these, it would be pretty minimal for other aspects of the applications. You don't typically get a lot of sign appeals. If it is a sign appeal, it's usually a very messy 7 signs on a property that have never been permitted, that they want permitted, that they're not happy with not getting permitted. That's an example that I've dealt with. And that takes a lot of time to deal with. All right. Sorry, I'm trying to scoot through because we haven't gotten to animals, and I know that's a big one.
We need to open up the access to some of the public here, who's behalf and let them speak, so.
Okay.
Yeah, Lorenzo Lowe, 4th Street. These fees are being applied to all businesses regardless of size. I mean, nobody really cares about Walmart or Tractor Supply. I mean, these are rounding errors in their budget. But if you have a little gift shop or a little bike shop or a little window treatment store, this is a big chunk of money. What's going to happen here is what's called in economic theory, I believe it's called creative destruction. The smaller businesses cannot compete with the bigger businesses. You're going to wind up with plenty of businesses, but they're all big corporate. The little mom and pop shops owned by the people in Yreka are going to be forced out of business by the high cost of doing business. You talk about just the cost of doing business. Well, it's going to drive a lot of people out of business because it's too much. I suggest you have a waiver for people, for locally owned businesses owned by people that live in Yreka and whose gross income is under a certain amount. Because otherwise they're just going to leave. They're not going to be here. If you have a gift shop, it's going to be some corporate owned place that can afford this, not by a Yreka citizen.
Very good point, Lorenzo.
Can I address that for just a moment? And you bring up good points. When I purchased, I'm only going to speak to my business here in Yreka because I had one in San Diego, one in El Centro in Southern California. But when, on this one, when I purchased into it, I built in the cost of the sign. I built in everything from the $10,000 that the sign cost to what it was gonna cost to, yes, to, sorry, Debbie's, believe it or not, to what I had to pay to the city and all my other permits. I mean, that was built in. It was built in prior to signing a contract with Sears Hometown Inc. And it was built in before signing any contracts with banks where I borrowed money. Now, I also, I hear what you're saying about anybody that's under a certain income, but I do want to share with you something about people that own small businesses. People that own small businesses in America, they're not going to share their income with you. I'm not going to share my income with the city. It's none of their business what my income is. It's none of their business what I take in. That's why again, coming from a farming family, we never shared our income. That's why even though we lived on $500-600 a month, there wasn't a one of the four of the boys in my family, and there wasn't a one of the five of the kids in my wife's family who was farming that got any kind of scholarship or help with college. Because we're not going to share that. That is our business, and it's none of anybody's business in this room, what I do. And so I appreciate what you're saying, but I'm going to tell you that people in business are fiercely protective of their finances. A restaurant, a bar, a retail outlet does not need, they don't want you to know what they're making.
Us as a council have to let everybody know what we're making. They are very good points, and
It's
that's,
the business of the Internal Revenue Service. They know what you're making. And if you want to get this exemption, you can share your tax returns with the city. Otherwise, you don't get the exemption.
But see, the thing is, unless the city wants to file FOIA, why would I give them any of my personal
Then you
information?
don't get the exemption.
Do you trust the government enough to give them your personal information, all your stuff?
They already have.
do it every year.
No, they don't. They don't have everything.
I have to file
Okay.
federal income tax, state income tax.
I have a choice. Yeah. I'm going to tell you that the average small business person is not, if you go and I did an economic study then in my senior year for San Diego State, and we went to 500 businesses in the Imperial and Mexicali Valley, and we were trying to figure out what we could do to help them. Guess what? The number one thing was that they said the government can do to help them. Don't ask us any more questions. We got brushed off probably 60% of the time. Granted, that was 41 years ago, but I mean, so I'm just saying, I agree with what you're saying, but I don't think you're going to get people coming in asking for a waiver because I don't think.
Let's, again, I both sides here, so I guess.
So let Lorenzo.
Yeah, this goes back to, I think, Jason and Juliana. Is this even something that could be even considered? So.
Yes, thank you for asking that. And I think Juliana and I talked about this this morning or yesterday, so.
At the end of the day, fees are under finance. I'm just really, my big thing about presenting this and answering your questions is talking about the process that we take and the amount of time it takes us in my department and building. I think for fees though, I back away slowly.
Or
Not my purview.
let's just go back to, is there, from your perspective as a planning director, any legality issue with that type of option?
Right, I mean, some type of exemption or
Yeah.
reduced fee exemptions.
Can you give me an exemption at Sears? Because I own my own business and not give me an exemption, I'm saying, and give Dwayne an exemption or Debbie at their businesses because they own them and they're not franchised.
Well, we definitely need to give Debbie an exemption.
Yes, you do.
And Corey,
Yes, you do.
Corey too.
So you
But
get
seriously,
into
yeah.
kind of tricky areas with this, at least in my personal opinion, in that you get into discrimination. Just because I make more money, you're gonna make me pay more money. So you want to keep that in mind. We do offer waivers for things like dog fees. We offer low income waivers. Hey, prove to me you are low income. I'm happy to give you the volunteer form. You can go volunteer and it'll pay for your dog. 9 times out of 10, they're like, I don't want to give you anything. Here's my $30. People don't want to do the work. We ran into the same issue with EDC trying to help small businesses during COVID. They didn't want to do the work behind it. They didn't want to prove how much income they were making. They were like, it's not worth all the effort. So that, I mean, you can offer it, but who would actually be taking advantage of it? I couldn't tell you.
Personally, if I could save money, not $100, that's not gonna make a difference. But if I had thousands of dollars in fees,
I thought we were just speaking to the signs.
Okay,
So for me, that doesn't seem like
that's
a
not
ton
gonna
of
make or
money.
break me.
Right,
not gonna
that's
make
kind
or
of
break
my
me.
thought.
But
So-
some of these fees, yeah, I'd show you anything, my kindergarten report card, I
So-
don't care.
Yeah, so the other thing too is the city council, and this is something that we're actively going through at City Hall with a individual. You have an option called a development agreement. And so if like say NorCal is going to do $1 million expansion, they're going to have to pay $15,000 in application fees under this new code. They go, we can't afford that right now. Could we defer that over 3 years? You have the power to do that. Or if you do want to waive it, it's basically going back to this whole thing. This is a user fee. So this is a benefit for individuals who want to do a certain type of action that requires us to process that. You, as a city council, as the fiduciary body, have tax revenue that you could use to subsidize an individual's application. But that's up to you. And I think my recommendation, and this is from working with small cities and economic development, if you come into a circumstance where you want to expand your business, it's going to cost $175,000, but we see the benefit in that as a city. It's then the city manager's purview to work out a development agreement with you that goes, okay, we'll waive these fees, or we'll allow you to defer these fees, or we'll work something out that's mutually beneficial. And then that's presented to the city council for approval. And so we can do that. So if there is a circumstance where it is very, very large, we have mechanisms to work with people and do that on a case-by-case basis. I think doing it on a case-by-case basis in front of council is the way to go if it is something that large. Because again, I am not responsible for the budget. Technically, even Jason is not, and Emily is not. We basically, council is. And so it is completely within your purview to do a development agreement. And, you know, I argue, for example, with the mill, the city council at the time for the mill site that's now defunct, or someone's in there now. But when they originally built it, the city council deferred public improvements. They, I believe, deferred some fees, Retta. I don't know if you remember that. Did they defer fees for the off of Philippi? They just deferred the public improvements. So they deferred the public improvement. I just know this because Matt and I talked about it. They deferred the public improvements for them because they were like, it's going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to do public improvements. And the council said, yeah, defer it. That's fine. I wish we would have gotten a bond because, of course, within a couple of years, they went defunct and never did the public improvements. And so it is a balancing act of what do you want to accomplish within the city? But that was a decision made openly and transparently by council. And so if someone does have an issue, we definitely can work with them. Again, if we do get larger builds, the Yreka Travel Center Hotel that's going through an environmental impact report right now, you know, they may come back and the mitigations they're going to have to do to build that thing may be very, very expensive. And we've already talked to them about there is an option to come to the city for a development agreement. Because again, you weigh the cost versus the benefit for the community as a whole. But that's done with you and it's not necessarily done internally with us. Because
I guess that would be the main thing, is to be able to have that option, getting back to that option, because getting back to what Lorenzo said too, because if you, especially on a new small business, a mom and pop, just opening up a little, say like little Whackers back in the day, I don't know if you remember Whackers.
Oh, yeah.
or not, but you
Every
get a
morning.
Little candy store back in the day, they're going to open it up. You know, they're not having big budget, so, you know, you get all these fees, you're gonna stop them from pretty much starting some little mom and pop shop before they even get started. So being able to have an option to either waive the fees or even just get the fees spread out over a certain amount of time.
And you
That
currently
would
have
be,
that
that would
ability.
be the key thing there, because we don't want to discourage any new business, especially any little mom and pop shop from opening it up. If they think that they got all these, this fee, the sign fee, this fee, and all these other fees,
It's scary.
It's gonna scare them off. I guarantee you.
Well, be a negative Nelly is that you don't want to discourage someone from failure to say, if you don't have $1,000 to pay for a sign or pay for permits. You don't have the business to be
Well,
doing
true.
business.
This day and
Working
age.
I mean,
capital.
I'm in the middle of something right now, and I don't want to disclose the opening, but I have to sit down and I have to write what my net worth is and make sure I have this money to do what I want to do here in the next few months. And it's the cost of doing business what I want to do. And I'm including that I have to get a city business license. I have to freaking get a sign permit. I have to do all these, and I'm doing it. And that's just the cost of doing business. And this company that I am dealing with, it wants to see that I have that money to do it.
Six
I'm
out of,
not gonna fail, so I don't want someone coming in. and
six
saying,
out
"Oh,
of
I opened
10
a
small
business,
businesses
I
fail.
have $5,000 to open a candy business and say, okay, well, no, don't pay this. They're gonna be done.
So just to let you guys know, we are gonna have to bring this back
we're-
to the second meeting, but we still have dogs. And we're supposed to then go to the court session, so I just wanna keep us going.
Yeah, keep going.
Six out of 10 small businesses fail. They fail because they're undercapitalized. And you made a good point. You go in undercapitalized. Yeah, when I opened my first business, they told you need to have enough capital to run through. This was back in 1981. They said you need to have enough capital to run through 6 years without turning a profit. In other words, and so
That's crazy.
no, that's just business in the United States. And the United States is, again, I think it's over 60% of business in the US are small business. And small business is 50 employees or less. So, I mean, yeah, we can scare people away, or we can also sit up and play God and go, well, you get it, you don't. You get it, Skip, you don't. And then we can also, there are lots of ways we can finance it. We can drop a cop or two. We can drop, sorry if Jerry's here, we can drop a fire chief. We can put off the fire hall for another 10 or 15 years. In order to finance for people, to help them out, and then, and just let our constituents know the other, 7,763 people that we'll get to you. We're gonna get to you, but we're gonna deal with this one right here first. Because they're more important. And because we don't, have any faith in our community. Our community is not a nice place to live. So why should we charge for anything?
Well, I look back to even when I started my own business back in 1999, that I didn't have hardly any capital. I just jumped in there, full bore, seat of my pants, did it, didn't have nothing going on, that's.
And my first one in 81, I think we borrowed 40 grand. Nobody would give us a loan. So we got a private loan at about 10 or 12% because we couldn't get any loans from banks. Not a 21-year-old and a 24-year-old guy. But when I bought my third business here, it was about 6-7 times that. So, and it was, again, it was a cost doing business. So I mean, when Corey says it is these, and you get these places like Arby's that come in and go and Dollar Store and Dollar General. That's all you charge?
Oh,
Hell
yeah.
yeah, I'll pay for that. I just paid 5 times that over in Nevada.
No, I understand.
I wanted to remind the council that I think we'll be very successful on our economic development partnership with the EDC for 750,000 of ED loans that go with job creation, which a new business will do. So there's some great partnership tools that we're going to, with this group, start leveraging that will assist those businesses. So.
But those are one-time monies, right? Those are
Pardon?
those are
Yeah, that was,
ongoing, those are ongoing monies or one time.
those are loans
Yes.
and or grants.
These are ongoing. That's, and I appreciate what you're saying, but I
She's,
mean,
she's just trying to bring some
Yeah.
light to that there is hope for the small businesses, like Lorenzo's saying, that
Yeah.
they could get some help.
Yeah.
Without, and do the fees that we're talking about doing, that help offset those costs, as long as those are made available to those.
and I don't disagree with Lorenzo. I worked with SBA for 12 months to get a loan. And I was no closer to getting a loan with SBA through a local bank here after 12 months and said, wow. And went to Dina Rosardo and she had me a loan in 21 days.
I know, yeah, it's quick.
So it's not like, I hear what I hear what you're saying, Lorenzo. It wasn't easy, but
And Mr. Mayor,
Yes. We're ready to move on.
yes, and I just wanted to say that I would prefer that we continue this discussion and then we'll get to close when we complete this.
thank you.
Okay.
Did you have a comment? Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. You keep
There
looking
will
at me
be.
intently,
Animal
so I wanted to
control.
make sure we give the opportunity. I'm gonna go ahead and start down at the bottom. We're gonna start with the livestock animal permit, just so we kind of clear up that discussion from last time. This is a one-time application. It is not per chicken, per horse, per dog. It's just a one-time application,
Not annually either.
not annually. It is a one-time.
time.
They go out, they check out the site, they make sure that you have proper shelter for your animal, depending on what it is, that there's appropriate space for that animal, and it's a one-time and done deal. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay, on to dogs. So we are proposing to go from 30 to 40. Last time fees were raised were back in 2017. If we had increased fees by $2 a year, as is the current proposal, we would be at the $40 in 2023. This is based off of maybe making 50% coverage of our ACO program. That includes the shelter, the part-time help to clean the shelters, the food for the dogs, the animal control officer to go out and patrol and pick up lost animals and return them to their owners.
And the licensing itself.
And the licensing itself, which covers for office staff to send out the letters, to collect the fees, to set up payment plans with people if they can't afford their payment. There is a low income option that they can apply for, and we verify their low income. We give them a form. They go out and volunteer at the rescue ranch for 3 hours, and their unaltered pet is paid for the year. This is an annual fee. Yeah, any questions?
So where's your comparisons? Do we have any comparisons on the other cities? Yeah. Jeez. Look at all these other comparisons.
For unaltered, Prescott, Arizona charges $100 a dog. Prescott is a city that's much larger than us. It's about 26,000. As I drove through Bakersfield and we actually noticed signs, a couple of Bakersfield, Tulare, Wasco, Shafter, average between $80 and $100 a dog. And they also have electric signs up in the cities that say, pay your dog license now, it's gonna double. You're gonna get it's gonna double. That's your fine when you don't make the date by, I forget what it was, like October 1st or something. I was surprised because they had them running on their electric signs on the road.
Our
So-
late fee is $10. That's whether you're a day late, a week
Yeah.
late, a month late.
That's very generous. Tell that to the bank. IRS, DMV.
Your comparison is $10 for the county.
We're not the county, we're the city.
And they're hurting that.
Yeah, and they owe lots of money and they've been trying to dig out of a hole for about 15 years.
Yeah, the city of Sacramento, they have of course, they're a way bigger city, so they bring in way bigger revenue. But they have a 3-year option. They have the spay neuter at 20, 2-year at 32, 3-year at 51, unaltered of 80, 128, and 205. They have a 3-year, of course, they're a bigger city, bringing more revenue.
Right.
With that cost, of course. So that's kind of a good option to do a 3-year. If you just want to do 3 years, to give them a break of the fee. Maybe.
When's the last time we raised?
2017. And it's my understanding that back then the concept was trying to get at least 50% of our costs covered, because that other 50% is coming from those 3 little pots of money that I talked about earlier. That is also paying for our entire police force, our fire department, all of those departments that I referred to. We don't charge for our police to go and come to your call, so we can't recoup money that way. So we are supplementing people who own dogs. And people who don't own dogs are technically paying for dogs.
Yeah.
If you look at it in that concept, your sales taxpayer is paying money that is going towards dogs.
And Mr. Mayor, if I can just make a suggestion, I think this is
Yes.
a topic for the public.
Yeah, I have a problem with the waiver because I'm disabled and I cannot go out to rescue ranch and just spend 3 hours out there
Could you,
petting dogs.
could you perhaps volunteer at the library and read books?
I am disabled. No.
Okay.
No, I can't. I can't do any of that. This is what I do for my public right here. I come to these meetings. This is what I do. And I do it very passionately at that. But I have 3 dogs and they're service dogs. One is retarded, but still service dog. He picks up stuff when I drop it. And I need him to do that or I will fall. So for me to license my dogs, I'm not happy, not at all, because it's gonna be 40 and then it's gonna be 50 and then 60. Meanwhile, there's dogs here not licensed at all because they don't take their dogs to get rabies shots. They don't take their, so you don't know about them. I know about them. I know that they're unaltered, so they should be forced to be fixed. They should be forced to be rabied. They're not, because why bother? It's a Chihuahua. It doesn't go out of the house. It's not okay. It's not okay. And it's not okay to make me pay for those people. And there's a lot of them here. There's lots of dogs that are unaltered, running amok. Bruce Street, corner of Bruce Street. He's got 3 dogs, 2 pit bulls and 1, I don't even know what it is, half a dog, not licensed, all of them intact. Haven't seen them getting in trouble. Every single night he lets them go. Every single night they run through town. People are always complaining about it, but nothing's done. This is what really makes me angry. I'm not okay with this at all. At all. Because, you know, I have 3 dogs, like I said, and it's gonna cost me a lot of money. I just paid $364 for an annual vet fee. I'm weighing taking care of my dog and licensing it. Maybe my dog don't go out of the house anymore. Maybe all of a sudden it's dead. You know, that's what people are gonna say. We're not, because we are honest to God people. But there are people who are already saying that, and there's gonna be a lot more saying it. That's what I'm hearing. That's what I have heard from my constituents.
I agree. I think there's a lot of it is enforcement on that aspect. Very good point. We need to up our enforcement on that. And I don't know, that's gonna be a future just topic, obviously.
Just so you're aware, we do review all rabies reports and send out letters to newly rabied dogs so that we can get compliance. We have increased our compliance to 80%. This last year, we've had ACO on the run for months at a time. And we do follow up on reported, hey, I don't think this dog is licensed. We run it through to see if they're in the system. If they're not, we send ACO out to go make contact with the homeowner, ask them about their dogs, and give them options to comply.
Yeah, and just to follow up with that, I think our planning director, you know, obviously has a lot of experience and expertise, and she normally talks about a non-smoking ordinance, I think, in the downtown areas and having to work on that. And this is very similar as I come into the city of Yreka in this role, as we have a lot of new faces in their roles and people are hungry to do the right thing. Enforcement takes time, administrative law enforcement, and it's roughly 3 years to get to kind of, that's the standard. And so we're coming in here and, you know, I understand, I worked for Siskiyou County, and so I understand their budgetary shortfalls. I understand any of the staffing shortfalls that the city has gone through before I came on board here. But this program requires a large level of enforcement. And I think, as the member of the public stated, enforcement costs money. And so we plan on enforcing building code. We plan on enforcing the dog license. We plan on enforcing your Muni code. And in order to do that, that's going to take a certain period of time before it becomes normalized and people acquiesce to, I got to pay my dog payment. I think I spent more time with individuals that did not want to pay a $10 late fee the first few months I was here, which then my time's not built into the $30 fee. So just something to consider.
Right. No, there's a lot of that, like you said. I mean, I think, you know, Don Maria has a point that what do we do on an individual that can't physically do those volunteer work? And what is, you know, what do you guys suggest as a council?
Well, they can answer phones. they can do many things, not something they can. There's many opportunities. I have 3 dogs too. I get it. It's not very, maybe my income is different than yours. I understand that. But I pay my vet bills for 3 dogs. I pay my license fees for 3 dogs. They're all neutered. I do the right thing. Where, you know, I think the neuter for the dog that's unaltered should be higher because look at the way our shelters are full. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And I don't know, it's just, I get it, but I think it's just, I think the unaltered should be a lot higher to, so they can get it done. I mean, it's not that, I mean, there's spay and neuter fees out there that help with people who are doing great work at some of these rescue, the rescue ranch, SNP. And they're just, begging for volunteers, begging for donations, and they're just all full. So I get it. We all do the right thing. Some don't, but hopefully the staff they're going after.
That's a great
not
idea.
compliant.
That's a great idea. So keep the altered price the same as it has been, but keep tacking on to the unaltered. I'm good with that. That covers their costs.
Well, I mean,
How about require spay and neuter in the city? You live in the city, spay or neuter your animal.
I wouldn't go that far.
Yeah, that's a tough one, because
Yeah.
what do you, say I got a dog and I want that dog just to get bred one time, female dog, just so it can have puppies, so I can share those
Yeah,
quality
yeah.
puppies with somebody else. I'm not sure if I agree with that so much, but
people,
I still agree with, some more exemptions and getting back to, like I said, phone call with, I'm not sure about the phone call thing, if she can answer phone calls, where would she answer a phone call?
Rescue
from?
ranch.
Huh?
Rescue ranch. They're always looking for people to answer phones.
To answer phone, okay, that's good, okay, I didn't know that. The other thing is, how do we enforce it with all the homeless? There's probably about, I'd say, probably 90% or more of the homeless individuals out there that have dogs are not in compliance.
well,
Unfortunately, I've seen about 6 of
they
those
addressed
dogs
that actually at the last
meeting.
meeting. These 2 ladies
Huh?
addressed it. They addressed it at the last meeting. Yeah. Homeless.
We actually have a number of homeless that comply.
Yeah,
With
there's some
licensing.
that I can take you out and walk about right now and show you.
I don't doubt that there's dogs out there that are
I know.
unlicensed. I
There's
would
gonna
not
be an
say that
exception
that would be
There's
frivolous to
always
say
an
that.
exception to a rule, always. And
And other, I'm definitely going to do that. So that will kill me.
Or some other place.
Not the people who can't do this public service, people who want. There's hundreds of people who do, will say.
Right.
Screw you. I keep my dog. Whatever you do.
So then we cite.
And in order to make them comply, we will be investing money, time and effort over the next 2 years to make that happen. And so unfortunately, this isn't a program that we can say, let's just not do the program because it's mandated by the state. And so that is your guys' dilemma here is we would like to enforce this. We would like to get more robust in our code enforcement. And I think we've discussed that in the past. And so we're not even asking to recoup anywhere near 100% of the cost into the program, but it is ultimately your fee schedule. And you are entitled to have these conversations about unaltered prices possibly.
That's great. It's simple.
And are we gonna continue to subsidize the rest of the people that don't own dogs? I mean, the people that own dogs and the people that don't own dogs, are we gonna subsidize them? When I adopted Charlotte, our dog from Rescue Ranch, if we paid $200, that's the adoption fee to get her.
This is fixed.
Oh, is it 300 now? Okay. And she had to be fixed and she was offered back to the owners. The owners came to get her after she had been shot in the side and had a whole litter of puppies. And they said, we'll give her to you, but we're going to fix her first and you'll pay for that. And they said, no, she's not going to be fixed. We don't want her. So they left. So there are people that don't want to fix them. That's probably a discussion for behavioral health as to, somebody that says, no, I'm not gonna fix my dog. I mean, I know a lot of guys, friends of mine won't fix them because they're not a stud anymore. They're not gonna fix their males. So, but then when we adopted the second one, it was $200 and they paid for everything, the amputation of the leg and everything from where she had been run over out at the lava fire. So $200 is, I mean, it was worth it for me to pay $200 to not buy from a puppy mill. I just have a hard time with puppy mills when we're when we're killing somewhere around 800,000 to 1 million dogs a year in the United States. I don't see it. And
I
we,
also went for Rescue Ranch too, and I actually, I'm last I'm able to do this, I tacked on extra money to my adoption fee, and I was happy I could do that, but that's gonna help another dog or help another family.
Yeah.
Whatever, so I am, happy I was able to do that, so this is the cost of owning a dog and giving a dog a second chance of life, and, it's, but yeah. And then, I've seen lately, I follow the animal control page, and the homeless or, that have the dogs, I've seen about 3 or 4 in the last few weeks that are, because you see them with their dog, and then you see that dog at the animal control and they're up for adoption. So they are enforcing out there, and they have been taken because of, and it's sad, but then they go out to find a good home, and because they usually don't go back to get their dogs because they don't want to pay the fees. So it's sad that
Just for,
they do it enforced.
yeah, just for clarification, literally can volunteer anywhere. Like it doesn't have, I always say rescue ranch because we're talking about dogs.
Right.
But they can literally volunteer anywhere. They can volunteer for the city. They can volunteer for schools, for churches, they can volunteer anywhere. And that also applies to our infrastructure fee waiver volunteer hours. So I think we proposed 8 hours if they can't afford the fine.
Yeah, and
Keep that in mind.
I'd like to be on record as the city manager of Yreka that I would be veering our volunteers to be picking up dog feces in our parks.
sounds
That's a
good.
Good idea.
Yeah.
And reminding people to put their 6-foot leash on.
Yeah.
I don't have any problem with leaving them the way they are or moving them, just as long as we know that if we're gonna leave them, if we're not gonna take advantage of it, that we're subsidizing. And, just be able to explain to our taxpayers that we appreciate that they're helping to pay for this, for other people's dogs. And let our public know that if we have to cut something, we don't mind cutting it either, because we don't want to charge the fees that we should be charging. And I don't think that they're as high as other cities. I could say that. So
So you don't think Cora's idea was good?
I'd like to keep the same fee of it, but I would like to raise the $10 on
Unaltered.
yeah, honestly, Debbie, I'd like to drop them. I mean, if you want to know what I want, I'd like to see them dropped. But I'm not speaking, for myself. Yeah. I'd like to see them dropped. I think $10 for $5 for an altered dog and $10 for an unaltered would be fine, and $5 a cat. But I'm not speaking for myself. I'm speaking for people around me.
I thought you just got through arguing the point that we are promoting subsidizing people with pets.
We are, but I don't mind if somebody wants to subsidize me and give me free money. Do you mind if somebody wants to give you free money? Are you going to turn down free money from somebody?
I'm having trouble following your argument.
You asked me, do I like Corey's? I said, yes, I like it. I would love personally, I'm speaking personally now, not as a councilman. I would personally love to see the dog fees dropped. But as a council person, that would be for me a very detrimental thing to do to the city. To take away more revenue from the city, I mean, to take away or to squelch possible revenue that the city can morally, rightfully, legally, ethically, try to get in order just to maintain 50%.
Nobody's saying that. I said the same amount of money would come in if we put
Yeah.
that extra fee over
Yeah.
on the unaltered dog.
No, I
That would
didn't say
actually
anybody was
depend
saying
on
that.
how
You
many
asked me
altered
what I
versus
was saying, and I'm telling you what I said. This is what I said. I'm speaking now. I spoke first as Paul McCoy citizen, then I spoke as Paul McCoy councilman.
Do you have multiple personalities?
Yes, I do. I'll be a behavioral
So
health
just
later
the difference
today.
in The altered and
So-
the unaltered would depend
Come
on
by and
how
see
many
me.
are altered and unaltered.
Right.
So to come to the same nexus, we'd have to evaluate how many are altered versus unaltered.
But I'm saying, I'm still saying, like I said, I'd like to stay the same order, but I don't want to see our program fade away and not have a technician down there cleaning up that little dogs or walking the dogs either. So I don't want to see them. Yeah, I
Yeah.
recall, I like to see a litter, but do I want to see those dogs taken care of while they're in our intake? Yes, I do.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, this is that. And no, I'm not saying leave the the altered, the same price. I want it to stay as proposed for the raise, but I want to see the unaltered raise.
And I think the late fee should be 20 and not 10.
Well, yeah, that's
I'm-
other good
I'm-
point is
you know-
too, is that, but you, the other thing, how many do we have licensed? Do we know that right now?
Approximately.
How much? About
1,400. I was like, ooh.
There's about another 250 that are unlicensed then, 250, 280. That, I mean, if 80% is,
Yeah.
you can kind of go on that. So, yeah.
Well, and that doesn't include if we're unaware, right? So there's gonna be animals that exist that, those are the animals that we are aware of.
Yes,
So we're
yes.
80% compliant on the animals we are
So
aware of.
we don't do door-to-door checks on people's animals. That's not really our purview, but if someone were to call and say, hey, the guy next door's dogs are barking like crazy, we would then look through the system, see if they have a license. If they do not, then that's when we start the investigation process of you have dogs, but no, I'm not going around and knocking on everybody's door and asking how many dogs they have in their house.
Well,
Um, But
maybe we need to charge more to get her to do that.
And you just said, you talk about all these other cities that go by, we don't live there, just like Siskiyou County charges $10. We don't live there.
Are we an inferior city to them? Is that what you're saying? So we should charge less, is what I'm asking. And you're,
I'm saying we should charge what's appropriate. And if only 1,200
1,400.
1,400 dogs are licensed, that's telling you something. Because look at the amount of people live in this city, 1,400. We have 3 dogs, he has 3 dogs, how many other people have?
Right.
what is the
Seven.
muni code on dogs? How many dogs can a family own?
6, isn't it?
Is it 6 now or 5?
I think it's fine.
It needs to be amended, again, is very helpful.
Yeah.
A lot of these costs can be brought down with the amendment code, because we're having issues with people with a ton of dogs. We have.
Yeah.
And that's something we're gonna have to address later, it's consider them a large kennel, with all other bad worms. But yeah, you can have 5 dogs, but it's hard.
We have 2 that are out there.
So if you do the math, you're doing the math, we got just in altered dogs, 1,400 dogs, 14,000. For the old license fee, 56,000 for the new post fee, just for altered, this is for all altered, just say that, for all altered. That's $14,000 difference from old fee to new. On altered, just altered alone dogs for 1,400 dogs, so I'm just bringing numbers back into the game, if that's what people are looking at as numbers. We, as a city, will bring in a minimum of $14,000 a year with this new fee.
Exactly, and I think that's why I personally consider it nominal. And so we also talk about, I think when I first started, there was interest in improvements to the kennel. And so we know that those are going to come out of the general fund at some point, but that's all part of the process of what we're talking about here. And so the revenue coming back in, we're nowhere near requesting 100%. So.
Exactly. I guess that's what I'm getting at too, is like the 14,000. I think more than anything myself, we need to bring everybody up to the legal status of how many people don't have their dogs licensed. And you'd be surprised on how much more revenue we bring in. I know you're saying that we have all these people, but there is definitely not, a lot of people that don't have licensed dogs running around the city.
If you can imagine, I'm sorry, Mr. McCoy. If you can imagine, we get a complaint, someone puts in a complaint form. our code enforcement officer, or, you know, as we look at different opportunities to have ACO and code enforcement fulfill the same roles. One of them goes out there, contacts, somebody gets a notice of violation. They do not comply. They get another notice of violation. We go through our normal muni code process. Eventually, there's a hearing. And that costs money, right? So there's a ton of administrative paperwork to bring people into compliance. We know that's a losing money proposition, but that is what we're proposing, is that that's our job, is to enforce the muni code. And so we're doing that now. We're taking on added, or just the basic responsibility that I think in the past, maybe they were focusing on other avenues that were bigger needs at the time, before I came on, before Juliana came on, before Emily came on. So the money coming back in, the revenue coming back in will never pay for that. But that is the intention, is to bring, you know, obviously our intention is to bring everyone into compliance. Then we would see more revenue coming in, but we would never reach 100% funding.
So you're never gonna recuperate that. And now with the our new administration we have here too, especially in the law enforcement side of things, these compliance issues, I think, are gonna start getting more and more resolved. In the past, that has not been resolved.
Well, and I think it's not necessarily everybody, right? We have to go through the process. Bluebird, Herzog, people have to see us go through the process. And once we go through the process on a handful of people, the word travels that, oh boy, the legal team's getting involved here. So we'll see more compliance.
Go ahead, let her go, yeah.
So are we still are we still letting prisoners keep their dog at the, animal control for no fee at all?
I'm unfortunately not aware of that.
Oh, yeah, that's a cop question. Bulls always allowed. And we had dogs at, the animal control, at our animal control, for a year and a half, waiting for the person to get out of jail to get their dog. And we never charged 1 penny. So I want to know about those. And then I want to know about those dogs. Are they fixed? Are they not fixed? And increasing the fee for unfixed dogs, that's what we need to do. But for the dogs that are fixed, don't punish us, because we are doing the right thing for our dogs. And yeah, I'll pay every fee I have to, because I have to. And I'm the right person. But I'm saying there's other people out there who aren't, and there's people out there who are so disabled they can't do stuff. So we do need to subsidize them. They are disabled. You know, that's different. If they were able person, that would be fine.
We, in answer to Domrey's question, we are required by law to hang on to dogs, and I know at least through the trial phase, and that can be 60, 90, 100, in California it can be a year. I don't believe we are required to hold on to them while they serve their sentence, but I think she has a good point in charging for that. If we can, I don't know if the laws would allow it. But what I was going to ask in lieu of that, when she talked about our dogs running amok, do we have a fee for
Running at large.
running at large? Well, no, cities do. Cities will charge $30 or $40 for.
There's also a big part that it is an aggressive dog. That is an additional misdemeanor.
Is the misdemeanor leveled against the dog or the owner? Okay, see, I don't care about the owner. I really don't. We level the fee against the dog, so it goes back to the owner. That's what I'm asking.
Oh, yeah.
Can we level a fee every time we, warn them once, and then once we pick them up every time? Okay.
Steps, and then they get put back to the contract. here and that needs to apply. I don't think we've had anyone get to the $500 range, but we did have an aggressive dog situation which involved, having to get involved, but it's.
Well, we also know that there are many, my insurance company, AAA, will not insure me with a Doberman, a pit, anything like that in the house. Your insurance is null and void. Yeah, most of the more aggressive dogs, even though I think they're maligned. But I had a runner, that's why I asked. And never did the runner get picked up with my shepherd. Never did he get picked up by anybody other than people. And they call us and go, your dog's here. And I go,
My
That was
lab
the sheep.
got picked up because of lightning
Yeah.
storms. Poor dog.
so I think,
Took off. It was like, wasn't aggressive though, because the animal control officer at that point in time, she said she went and found the dog. It was over by, heading over towards behavioral health area. And as I went over the shop. And she said she opened up the door and my dog jumped by the seat and laid down.
so in response to what Don Marie has said, I think, I'm not gonna disagree with people that are trying to do the right thing, but we need to keep up with some kind of inflation. We cannot let licenses lie for 10 or 12 or 15 years. I mean, imagine if you did that, came over to me and I said, hey, I want you to charge me what you were charging in 2013 or something. Like, you go, yeah, you're full of crap, Paul. So I mean, I think we have to keep up with it, but also, you know, if you put more of it on the person who doesn't want to fix the dog, then, or the person who lets their dog get out, even if it's me, I mean, you put it off on them too, you know, because that keeps dogs like they're talking about running amok. I got 2 dogs right around the corner from you. Boy, they've run amok for, I've lived there 30 years and they've run amok for as long as they've been there. And we walk by and they run amok with my German Shepherd one time, and then they decided maybe it wasn't a smart move when I let the Shepherd have the whole 6 foot of leash. And you know what I'm talking about. So
I do.
So here's what I propose. I'm proposing in my own personal, we the altered one, we bump it up $5. The unaltered one, we bump it up another from $80 to $85. So in other words, altered would be 35, unaltered would be 85.
Okay.
That's my proposal.
can we make a decision like that in this meeting?
No,
No.
because come back. I'm just.
But you could recommend that I go back and alter the,
Alter.
alter the alter, amend the fee schedule.
I have a question on that because we also have an annual built in, I think, right?
We do. We have a 5-year step schedule.
Yeah, so are we maintaining that under your proposal where it goes up every $2? So we would, I think, go to 87, 89. Okay.
So your proposal is 35 and,
85.
okay, so no longer doing double the amount of altered.
I don't think we should.
Say what?
So normally our unaltered is half of what the
Oh, I
sorry.
see what you're saying.
altered is half of what the unaltered is. So 40 and 80, 30 and 60. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you want to do, if you want to vary from that, that's fine, but that's been our normal course, is that it's double of whatever the altered is.
I mean, that's just.
So if we
it
went
doesn't matter.
45, it would be 35 and 70.
Yeah, I'd still want more on the.
You want more on the unaltered.
Yeah.
I have to go home.
I would like, yeah, at least half.
Well, and I think we had a member of the public, because if it were my personal view, I mean, I say, let's charge them $1,000 for an unaltered dog. That's my personal view. And so just to point out, Mr. Lorenzo Love had the idea of 3 times. So following that model where it's a third of the cost for or for the altered, and then 3 times for the unaltered. So
So gonna be 35 and 105.
105.
I'll be okay with that.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Sends a message to people with unaltered dogs that,
Yeah.
you know, if you get it altered, it's, you know, you pay the,
Incentive.
yeah, you pay the vet to alter it.
Next thing we need is to patrol cats.
I don't want to get into a cat.
The
No
200
cats. No cats.
The 200 cats that I have around my house.
Oh, I think
On
that's-
this, can we also include a running loose fee or can we not? I know cities do include a running loose fee, and then it would behoove us to pick these dogs up.
I think
To allow yourself to apply that fee. So when you go to amend the code, you have, and this is another thing too, that like say, you can have separate fees for an initial license, you can have separate fees for people, you can have separate fees for a loose dog, but it has to be modified that you can set those by resolution in your current month.
Well, I think that'd be a good one for, yeah.
Yeah, we need to fix that.
What does our
So-
current code say? I'm sorry. What does our current code say about it? About, in response to the fees for
I
dogs?
have a charge for it,
It just says that we can charge the license.
not for a run of.
I'd like to see that modified.
Yes, and I think we intend to bring that forward because we need to have that conversation because there's obviously, as you hear from the planning director, there's a number of muni code
Yeah,
opportunities for us. And this is one that we need to wrap our heads around because we have some folks that it sounds like they're running kennels out of their houses.
Oh, not
oh, there
cool.
is, no, I know.
You've been by my house, or I'll get them to quit. I'll get them to shut up.
With a run in the mud one. would be-
There are people making over $10,000 running kennels out of their house, but they're not paying business license. They're not declaring it as income. They're not paying income tax on it. But they're not hard to find. They advertise on Craigslist and on Facebook. So you can find these people pretty easy. And then make them pay for these
Some of these fees.
unlicensed dogs they have and make them buy a business.
Home-based business license.
Yep.
And I think also there's a broader, I think Mr. McCoy brings it up. There's, with breeders, then you're adding more into the population of dogs, right? And so then there's a higher opportunity that Rescue Ranch is gonna be filled and that we're gonna have more dogs at the kennel. So it behooves us to update this ordinance.
Yes.
Definitely.
Thank
So
you.
back to this, what's the council think? So they can bring this back to us. But
I have 35 and 105.
Like it.
I'm in agreement with that, with
Like-
the rest of council. All right.
Okay. Yep.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you for that long.
I think we're done.
I am,
Responsible to people who are buying, who got 25 dogs. And how much they're giving them.
We don't do fees. I mean, they have to disclose they have pets on their property.
Our brand new neighbors who bought them, they had absolutely no idea.
So it's a different requirement in every single jurisdiction in California.
So they'll want to take their dogs to vet.
Yeah. Well, I think the only thing required for buying the home is that you have to disclose if somebody's died in the house. Or if it's been a meth lab, or it's been for cooking or mixing stuff.
So they ask now,
Yeah, yeah.
that's been on the property, but yes, they put dogs too, or whatever, yeah, they do answer the questions, but for us, we don't discuss saying, okay, you're gonna have to go license, that's not our responsibility.
Our realtor discloses somebody had died in the living.
and I just, while the public comment period's still open, I'd like to read a letter that somebody had submitted for public comment, and then I will read this again. If we happen to bring this back on 9/20, whenever we do bring it back, I'll read it at that time too. So this is dated August 24, 2022, and everybody received a copy of this letter. So this is from Grace Bennett. So please read to entire council, city council of the city of Yreka. It has come to my attention that there is an item being discussed about raising fees for services within the city of Yreka. Some of these fees are in need of being raised. However, the fees for parcel maps, property line adjustments, zone changes, map and zoning amendment are out of line. These raises will not help the citizens of Yreka or the city. The people of Yreka are already struggling to make ends meet. If the city council wants to encourage people to follow the regulations when developing land and building more housing and businesses, this is not the way to do it. These proposed increases will only drive new businesses and housing out of town, or even worse, people will not apply for permits to complete their work. It is important to have inspections in developing properties for the safety of all of those involved. But making the fees so costly will not help to make people want to follow the regulations. Any fee that is raised more than double and in some cases triple the current fee is outrageous. I realize that some of these haven't been raised for many years, but that is not the people's fault. You can't raise fees that much at one time and expect the people to just stand back and let it happen. I encourage you to closely consider these increases. If you want our city to grow and prosper, this is not the way to do it. We need to encourage people to open businesses, build new houses, and be assets to our community, not chase off the opportunities to make our city better. Grace Bennett. And just to follow up on this, I absolutely adamantly disagree with this. If we look back historically on fees not being raised, we can not point to any of these things transpiring. And I will just mention this to the public. Please offer a solution, because this letter does not offer a solution. It says that these are out of line, but it does not justify that statement, in my opinion. And I'll be more than happy to discuss this with Ms. Bennett. So thank you.
She was a council for 8 or 12 years. There.
Supervisor.
Are you adjourning? Are you adjourning?
No.
Yeah, but we still get to quit this one.
Yeah. All right, any other comments from the council? There's no decision making made today anyways. This was just all for discussion. Which next meeting possibly would be brought back. Thank you for decision making, so. Alrighty.
Break time.
No, this is all we had on there.
Yeah, I would suggest that we had a meeting.
Adjourn.